Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. On the night of June 23, 1993, the officers closest to a crime scene had to undertake the unsanitary task of digging through trash. They had a penis to find, and it belonged to John Bobbitt. Lorena, his wife, had sliced it off while he was sleeping. It's been 31 years. John and Lorena are alive and well, and their story remains unforgettable. John and Lorena Bobbitt were a former American couple whose story kept the world shocked and amazed at the audacity of humans when pushed to the extreme. John Wayne Bobbitt married Lorena Gallo on June 18, 1989. John was born in New York and raised in Niagara Falls. Unfortunately, his father was out of the picture and he was taken away from his mother, who was a drug addict at the tender age of 3. He had 2 brothers, and with them he went to live with his aunt and uncle. John stated that he grew up in a large family and his aunt and uncle raised them to be religious. The family went to church every Sunday and John joined the party gladly. When John came of age, he enlisted in the Marines since many of his friends were doing the same. For John, there was no sense in being alone while all his friends were gone. So he found himself a new family, the U.S. Marines. On the other hand, Lorena was born in Ecuador in 1969 but raised in Venezuela. Undoubtedly, she started migrating early in life. As Lorena recounted in her Amazon documentary, she had watched a lot of American television as a child and it sold her the American dream. Her dreams came true when she migrated to America on a student visa. Lorena enrolled and studied at Northern Virginia Community College. John met Lorena at a Marine Corps officers' ball in 1988 while still serving in the Marine Corps. It does not matter if you have banished love at first sight into the pages of cheesy romance books. It happened for John and Lorena. They were attracted to each other and the chemistry was sublime. John described her as shy and didn't speak much English, but the chemistry was enough to start something. So that was what they did. They started dating each other. In 9 months, they were married. John Bobbitt married Lorena on June 18, 1989. According to an interview with 2020, the couple had different versions of how they got engaged. John claimed Lorena proposed to him in the presence of her mother. Lorena claimed the reverse was the case. Their wedding was a small one and officiated by a justice of peace. John adds that love or silly affection for one another had not rushed their wedding. They married quickly because Lorena's student visa would soon expire and she wanted to remain in America. It was her lifelong dream to live in America anyway, and who was John to deny her of such? This was one of the varying instances of their stories. According to Lorena, the abuse started right away after they got married. John has a contrary story. In his account, he did not harm, rape, or forcefully lay his hands on Lorena. He stuck to his story every time he was asked, and it was hard to pinpoint what was going on with the couple. John added that sometimes, when she started fighting him, he restrained her. He maintained his innocence and absolved himself of the assault claim made by Lorena with his testimony. Contrary to John's story, Lorena shared a version of her husband's assault. 1 month after their wedding, the couple were in a car when John started driving recklessly. Lorena was afraid for her life. Who wouldn't be? In her fear, she asked him to stop, placing her hands on the steering wheel. She intervened in a bid to straighten their route. It was at that moment that John, according to allegations levied against him, punched her for the first time. On June 22, 1993, John had suggested a divorce to Lorena, which upset her. Since she was still scared of him, she went to the police for help. The trip was in hopes of getting a protective order against John. The process took about 3 hours, but Lorena did not want to wait that long, so she left before she completed it. In the early hours of that evening, John went out drinking with his friend who had come to stay with him. When he returned home, he raped Lorena before he fell asleep. When he awoke, John said he had no memory or recall of what had transpired. He did not remember sex taking place between Lorena and himself, and the closest thing to a physical contact he vaguely remembered was petting, and that was it. On June 23, 1993, Lorena came home from work like any other day. John came home that night and raped her. It seemed the act was more customary than it was a one-time event. Afterwards, Lorena walked into the kitchen for a cup of water. There, among the kitchen utensils, was the knife that could give her breathing space from the instrument of torture her husband used to inflict pain on her. Lorena grabbed an 8-inch Jinsu carving knife she saw on the kitchen counter and walked into the bedroom with it. Lorena pulled back the sheets and severed John's member. Shortly after, Lorena left the apartment, got into a car, and drove away with the severed appendage in one of her hands. As she drove on, navigating the road with one hand on the wheel became too much work as the other hand held a severed member. She soon threw the shaft out of a window into a roadside field on Maplewood Drive. She drove around, not knowing what to do or whom to call. Eventually, she stopped and dialed 911, reporting what had happened and giving directions to where they could find her husband's missing appendage. The officers got there and got to work. After an exhaustive search, they did find John's missing appendage, washed it with antiseptic, and kept it in an icebox. Afterwards, paramedics drove him to a hospital. The surgeons reattached it in a surgical operation that took almost 10 hours. The incident happened in the early hours of 1993, around 4 a.m. By nightfall, Lorena had been arrested by the police and charged with the crime of malicious wounding. She risked spending up to 20 years in prison if found guilty. When Lorena Bobbitt was arrested, she reportedly told the police, "He always has an orgasm, and he doesn't wait for me ever to have an orgasm. He's selfish." The conversation ensued with Detective Peter Wentz and was recorded on a tape recorder. Mary Grace O'Brien, the Assistant Commonwealth Attorney of Prince William County, who was prosecuting Lorena, read the recording transcript that was read at trial. Many things about the couple's relationship came to limelight during the trial. Their home was somewhat volatile and had not been a happy place for Lorena. The Bobbitts revealed details of the event that led to the eventual act. Lorena accused John of abusing her sexually, physically, and emotionally. In addition to that, he flaunted his infidelity in her face and even forced her to abort a pregnancy. An expert witness had testified that John's threat imprisoned Lorena. "I will find you whether we are divorced or separated. Wherever I find you, I will have sex with you whenever I want to." The defense lawyer, Blair D. Howard, maintained that Lorena had acted in self-defense, coupled with temporary insanity. He stated that it was John's behavior and constant harassment that led to Lorena's snapping. She had been suffering from clinical depression. In addition to a truckload of post-traumatic stress disorder in the mix, one would likely have a mentally unstable person in their hands. The defense argued that John's perpetual abuse of his wife had caused everything. John denied all the allegations of abuse and harassment, but when Howard, the defense lawyer, cross-examined him, he found it hard to be consistent, conflicting his statement with known facts. In the course of the questioning, he weakened the prosecutor's case. In Lorena's testimony, there had been other rapes and physical battering on many occasions before the evening of the incident. She revealed that their finances were unstable, and John had not only stolen her earnings, but also spent the proceeds. Other witnesses corroborated Lorena's stories and claimed they had seen cuts and bruises on her. John's friends came forward to testify that John told them how he controlled her, forcefully had sex with her, and dominated her. The prosecution and the defense attorneys agreed that John definitely had a history of abusing his wife, and the repeated acts built up to the assault over time. The expert witnesses from both ends concluded that Lorena had been constantly battered and abused, and by 1993, she lived in fear of John. Before Lorena's trial, John was on trial from the 8th to the 10th of November 1993. On the 11th of November 1993, a jury of 9 women and 3 men found him not guilty of marital assault. John Bobbitt gave different variations of what happened between midnight of June 22nd and the early morning of June 23, 1993. In one account, he said they had not had sex, and even though Lorena had initiated sex, he was too tired to engage in it. In another account, he claimed that they had had sex, but he had slept through the whole act. The sex was, however, consensual, not a rape. After 7 long hours of deliberation, the jury found Lorena to be the most credible. She was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity. On the 24th of January 1994, Lorena was admitted into a psychiatric ward for 45 days. It was a 45-day evaluation period at the Central State Hospital in Petersburg. On March 1, 1994, she was released after being considered not a threat to herself or the society. In 1995, John and Lorena Bobbitt finalized their divorce. A series of events led to what happened between Lorena and John Bobbitt. Not taking them into account might seem like a biased way of reporting what went down. As he was the victim, John Bobbitt's severed penis gained all the attention and the sensation it could get. Not just that, due to what had happened, some feminists frowned on what Lorena had done as they feared it might have far-reaching consequences. But that would be a one-sided story. John was discharged from the Marines in 1991 and no longer had a steady paycheck. Ask anybody and they will agree that losing a credible and steady source of income might slow things down in any family. He had trouble finding or keeping a job. The role of the sole household provider soon fell on Lorena. At this time, Lorena worked as a nanny in the Virginia area and as a manicurist in a beauty salon. Lorena soon developed a close relationship with the woman who owned the salon, Jenna Basutti. In October 1991, Lorena started to embezzle Basutti's money. She stole about $7,000, and when Basutti realized the embezzlement, she ordered Lorena to repay the stolen money with interest. Lorena could keep her job at the salon but looked elsewhere for her newfound hobby of theft. She stole a few dresses from Nordstrom, and when she got caught, she was punished with community service. In the same year, Lorena had an abortion, and they had different stories about what happened again. According to Lorena, she was excited to start a family, but John did not receive the news with the same enthusiasm Lorena exhibited. She adds that John did not think he could care for the baby and suggested leaving Lorena if she kept and had the child. The fear of raising a child alone led Lorena to the choice of an abortion, and she insisted that John was the reason she had it. John's story was different as he recounted that Lorena had agreed that the time was not right for the couple to have a baby. They both decided on the abortion together. After the incident, John remained broke. To generate money, he tried to form a band called the Severed Parts to pay his mounting legal and medical bills. The band was not a success and it failed to generate money. In September 1994, John appeared in an adult film, John Wayne Bobbitt Uncut. After the trial, John Bobbitt moved to Las Vegas where he met Ron Jeremy. In an interview he had with Vanity Fair, John opened up about the adult film. A porno seemed like the best way to show my penis worked, only it wasn't all the way healed yet. I realize now that that was the point. The movie had not yet premiered when charges were brought against John by his new girlfriend Christina Elliott. He was found guilty of misdemeanor and domestic battery charges. He served 12 days out of the 15-day sentence a judge handed him. John divorced Lorena in 1995, and in 1996, he took another role in an adult film. One would wonder what the endgame was and why his phallus needed to grace screens. He had a reason that was at least reasonable to him. Besides the financial part, John had said yes to an offer from Howard Stern to undergo a reconstructive plastic surgery which would see the penis further enlarged. The second porno was titled Frankenpenis and was released in 1996. In 1999, John had accumulated a lot of legal issues for himself, ranging from assault to battery. He pleaded guilty to a charge of felony with attempted grand larceny after stealing $140,000 worth of clothing in Nevada. In the same year, a court found him guilty of harassing an ex-girlfriend named Desiree A. Luz. In 2002, he was charged afresh with battering his third wife, Joanna Farrell. He was found not guilty and was acquitted. Lorena resorted to keeping a low profile after the trial. To achieve that, she reverted to the use of her maiden name, Gallo. In October 1996, she visited Ecuador, the place of her birth, and had an official dinner with the current president, Abdallah Bucaram. The unlikely couple then baptized a child together as a godfather and a godmother. Their relationship sparked controversy in the media. The president was even criticized for having dinner with Lorena. In 1997, Lorena was in the news again after she was charged with assault against her mother. Reports had it that she punched the woman, Elvia Gallo, while they watched television. Lorena was soon acquitted of the charge and her mother remained with her. Lorena Gallo returned to the community college and found Dave Bellinger. The two became lovers in the late 90s and have since been together. Though they are unmarried, they have one daughter named Olivier together. Their decision to stay unmarried is speculated to be fear for marriages on Lorena's part, as her first marriage had not worked. In 2007, Lorena Gallo started a foundation aimed at helping women who were in abusive relationships. Her foundation was called Lorena's Red Wagon Foundation, a non-profit organization that helps survivors of domestic abuse. Lorena and John were never seen together in public, at least not until 2009 when they made their first and only joint television appearance. All through their trial, before, during, and after, the couple took interviews but separately, never together. That changed in 2009 when The Insider brought them together. In the interview, Lorena told John, "You drove me crazy. You drove me insane. No woman should go through what I went through." In 2019, a docuseries titled Lorena premiered on Amazon and reignited conversations around the incident involving Lorena Bobbitt, her claims of domestic abuse and marital rape. Back in the 1990s, the Bobbitts were the talk of the time and the opening line for every comedian in the country. It definitely would have a different reaction today. In an interview with Olivia B. Waxman, Lorena Gallo opens up about how she felt about her case in the media reports. She said, "It was sad because they were more concerned about ratings than anything. They were more concerned about his penis instead of domestic violence. They missed the whole concept of domestic violence and abuse against women by a mile." She continued, "This is a very important issue that's going on, and you're more concerned about the man who lost his penis. The whole country was divided into women and men. Unfortunately, we're still in a patriarchal society. It's a man's world that hasn't changed much." She further lamented how the new generation knew nothing about the story and how it went down. She disclosed that there was a history that preceded what happened. She further spoke on how she guided the detectives and police officers to where she had dumped her former husband's member. According to her, her help in finding her ex-husband's member depicted that she was not vindictive and that the incident was not out of spite. She declared that if she had done it with bad intentions, she would have replied to them with unconcern. Aside from the TV show where they had met in 2009, very little is said by John Wayne Bobbitt about the incident. He admits he still harbors feelings towards Lorena, but they hardly see each other. "I loved the woman she was," John said in an interview. With all indications, he had moved on from the incident, and even though the incident had made him famous and featured in 2 adult films, it seemed there was no staying out of trouble for John Bobbitt. While his former partner now has a foundation for women who are survivors of domestic abuse, Bobbitt, as of 2019, was reported as living in North Las Vegas and searching for treasures hidden in the Rockies by Forrest Fenn, according to Vanity Fair. In the August 2018 issue of Vanity Fair, John stated he was paying his bills from the settlement he received from a car crash he suffered in 2014. He also told the magazine that he had a penile reduction surgery in 2016 in a bid to reverse the cosmetic work he had undergone in earlier years. John still maintains his innocence. According to what the New York Times reported, he said, "Gallo was never abused. She was the abuser, and she cut off my penis because I was going to leave her." The story of Lorena and John Bobbitt happened at a time when patriarchy was still rife and marital rape was just starting to have laws against it in the 50 states of the United States. Lorena was inspired by her own story and the incident, yet she feels sad about the big picture which the sensationalist media of the time ensured people missed. In a way, John's genitals gained more popularity than the underlying condition that caused it to start with, which was domestic violence and abuse. From t-shirts to commercials, the term Bobbittize was everywhere. Today, her story may have taken a different turn. The media and general public would have addressed Lorena's part more than it was in 1994. There is no doubt that the system that empowers men because they have phallus is what Lorena Gallo wants to stop with her foundation, as she thinks women deserve to be heard and helped. Amy Chozick, in her interview with Lorena Gallo, described her as being straightforward and open. "I know I'm still Lorena Bobbitt. That name, it's significant here," Lorena says as Heather Sten of the New York Times reports. As Lorena drove Amy around in the neighborhood where it all happened, she admired what she had done for herself and how far she had come. She was quoted by Heather Sten saying, I'll put myself through the jokes and everything as long as I can shine a light on domestic violence and sexual assault and marital rape. She had no time to regret what she had done, the cutting off of her husband's penis. Amy asked her if she had regretted doing that, and her response was, "How can you regret something you didn't mean to do?" Today, a woman like Lorena would have been celebrated for standing up for herself and being a voice for the voiceless. Regardless, in her gentle way, the way she inspires is as graceful. And her war, albeit unintentional, against domestic violence was one she subdued. Story 2. On the 17th of April, 2017, Russell Shawn, a caretaker who lived along a logging road in Alsea, Oregon, was taking a walk. He spotted what looked like a person in the forest. Initially, he thought it was a prank some silly youth had staged. He reached down and touched the hand of the body to confirm. It was a person, a dead one. He hurried to a convenience store nearby to alert the police. The body Russell had found turned out to be Anna Repkina, a native of Moscow, over 5,000 miles away from home, decorated with candy wrappers, cigarette cartons, fast food bags, and KFC receipts. The 27-year-old was sporting a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. The police wondered how this young Russian woman ended up dead and discarded in the United States. The circumstances surrounding the death of 27-year-old Anna was quite saddening. The young woman had boldly followed her heart. She had chased after what she wanted, but she ended up losing her life. Anna Alexeyevna Repkina was a simple woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia. She came from a good family. Anna was a smart and hardworking woman. She loved traveling. She loved rock music. She loved cats, and she had a few of her own. She loved making memories and taking pictures of them. Anna loved love, and she wanted to be loved. She wanted to get married, have kids, and build a home. When asked, people could not seem to forget Anna's sense of humor. Anna was a delight to be around. In 2016, Anna got dumped, and her fragile heart was broken. Her high school sweetheart, whom she had dated for 7 years, broke up with her. Affectionate Anna, being affectionate Anna, wasn't going to wallow around and give up on her dreams. She was going to find her Prince Charming, and she was going to live happily ever after. Online dating was all the rage, so she signed up for some sites. Anna soon matched with someone on a Russian dating site, and he was everything she had hoped for. Anna's prince was William Hargrove, a 26-year-old Oregonian who worked as a bouncer and a mechanic. He loved everything Russian. Most of all, he loved Anna, too. William was kind to Anna. He complimented her often. He was far away, but he did his best to be present when she needed him. William's friends had described him as a funny, charismatic, passionate, and likable jokester. He was a goal-getter, and he encouraged everyone around him to chase after what they believed. His former roommate said William had a way with words and could easily get himself in or out of anything. They talked every day, and their relationship got quite serious in the few months they had connected online. They seemed like the missing half of each other. They had so much in common. They loved the same type of music. They loved attending live shows. They had a similar sense of humor. They were the perfect fit. According to friends who knew them together, Anna and William were complementary. William was the sweetest. He would constantly send her flowers even though they were continents apart. Soon, they began talking about meeting in person. The chemistry was present via cell phones, but they wanted to confirm it in person. So, in December 2016, Anna and William decided to take their months-old relationship a step further. Anna booked a flight to Oregon. Anna had booked the wrong flight on her first try. She had gotten a ticket for Portland, Maine, but was supposed to book a flight for Portland, Oregon. Anna had already flew to Maine before the mix-up was realized. But the woman wanted to spend the Christmas holidays with her boyfriend, and she did. She fixed her flight issues and landed in Oregon in time. William had picked her up at the airport. Anna and William spent 10 days together. He took her sightseeing. They went to the seaside, played in the snow, and cuddled by the fire. He also introduced her to his friends, screamed Happy New Year together, and kissed when the clock hit 12. They were locked in. It was the best Christmas a girl could have. At the end of Anna's 10-day visit, William proposed with his grandmother's emerald ring, and Anna said yes. Anna Repkina and William Hargrove were engaged. William had swiped right on Anna. He had her visit him in another country for 10 days. He introduced her to his friends. He swept her off her feet. He proposed. He was engaged. Another thing William did was two-time Anna. Turns out William had been seeing his landlady, 33-year-old Michelle Chavez. William rented a spare room in Michelle's home and apparently owned a lot in her heart. Michelle was married with 2 kids, but that didn't stop their love boat from sailing. In fact, the boat has been at sea for over a year. When Anna came to visit, she had met her competition under the guise of her boyfriend-turned-fiancé's landlady. Michelle had been understanding that her boyfriend had brought his girlfriend to her home. Maybe because she thought William wasn't ever leaving her. Maybe because she thought Anna was as unimportant as her own husband. Whatever the reason, she didn't blow their cover. It wasn't very clear to the prosecution and the public what Michelle's husband's stand was with all of this, until she found out about the engagement ring. Anna flew back to Russia, a happy camper. The newly engaged woman posted a picture of her ringed finger on Facebook. The algorithm did its thing and brought the post to Michelle's homepage. Michelle wasn't just angry that her boyfriend was engaged to another woman. Michelle had plans to leave her husband for William. She promised to. To solidify that promise, she took off her wedding ring and handed it to William. Her wedding ring was awfully similar to Anna's engagement ring. In fact, it was the same ring. William had recycled her wedding ring. Michelle expressed her anger to her boyfriend, and he assured and reassured her. Anna was nothing to him, and he was going to break the engagement. On the 1st of March, 2017, Anna returned to Oregon with her wedding dress and a suitcase. She had dropped her resignation letter at work and was ready to be with her fiancé, William, forever. Michelle didn't like this. Anna's mother, Yelena, had later expressed her worry about her daughter moving to the other side of the globe. She was unsure about William, a man her daughter barely knew. Yelena thought Anna was rushing things. But Anna said she was in love. Why should she wait? Yelena let her go. Michelle, after realizing Anna's visit was not a visit, grew increasingly infuriated. She asked William to find another place to stay as the engaged couple cannot remain under her roof. William obliged. He moved out of Michelle's home and rented an apartment for him and Anna. But he never stopped seeing Michelle. He would sneak out of his new home to go see her. He kept reassuring her of his commitment to her and Anna's nothingness. Michelle was concerned about how serious Anna and William were getting, so she took matters into her own hands. Michelle contacted Anna via Facebook one day and told her everything that had been going on. Anna reported everything Michelle had told her to William. William dismissed it as Michelle being a jealous ex. She believed him. The couple were going to live their life ignoring Michelle's jealousy. To start with, they booked the 23rd of March as their wedding date. They were going to get married by the sea. Anna put on the wedding dress she had brought with her from Russia, and off they went to their beach wedding. The officiant never showed up. After waiting for what seemed like an eternity, they went back home. They planned on trying to get married again sometime in April. There's surveillance footage of them getting food at a McDonald's drive-thru on that date. Anna was seated on the passenger side in her wedding dress. The officiant was ill. Well, he wasn't, but that was the story William fed to Anna, and she believed him. William kept insisting that Anna was unimportant. He wasn't in love with Anna. He had made it clear to her that he wasn't, but she just wouldn't budge. Michelle was getting tired of it. So on the 15th of April, Michelle put her foot down. William had to make a choice. It was her or Anna. He couldn't eat his cake and have it anymore. Michelle also insisted that if Anna wasn't gone by Thursday the 20th, she was going to build a snowman. To build a snowman referred to killing a person and hiding the body in a snowman, a place that is always cold and snow never melts, so the body is never found. After Michelle made herself clear to William, she suddenly couldn't reach him anymore. She assumed that he made his choice, Anna. She left him voicemails trying to communicate her feelings. The next day, Sunday the 16th of April, William called Michelle to let her know he was a free man. He and Anna had ended it. It was a messy breakup, but she was currently on her way back to Russia. William had hit a deer with his car and was struck at the Alcy Mercantile, so he asked Michelle to come meet him at the store. This was on Easter Sunday, and Michelle was at a family gathering, but they had to celebrate, so Michelle left her family's house and drove to him. They celebrated their sturdy relationship by having sex in William's car. On the 17th of April, Anna was found in the forest. At the beginning of the investigation of Anna's death, investigators didn't even know who she was. There was no means of identification around her, and she had only been in the state for a little over a month. There was no murder weapon, only scraps of trash. However, in the array of rubbish was a clear plastic bag. The bag contained a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken paper bag. The biggest clue to solving the case was the KFC receipt. The receipt found on the scene had a date, time, and debit card number. The debit card was linked to Kevin Thomas. Investigators tracked down Kevin Thomas, and it turned out Kevin was William's best friend. Upon questioning Kevin, he described his close relationship with William and how he was getting to know Anna. Kevin revealed a friendship tradition between him and William where they went to KFC for lunch every Friday. That receipt was from a purchase about a week before his questioning. The garbage we found was, I think, something you bought last week from KFC. Okay, do you know about that? Yeah, me and my brother go to KFC on Fridays. What's your brother's name? Kevin? Will Hargrove. Kevin had paid with his credit card, and William had paid in cash. Kevin had been the one to blow the whistle on what he called William's complicated relationship situation. The investigation of Anna's death was the only reason William's double timing had ever come to light. Kevin had also mentioned in his interview that William had borrowed his shotgun. The police asked to see the weapon, but according to Kevin, William had not returned it. When further questioned, Kevin further stated that William had said he wanted to borrow the shotgun, go up to the woods, and blow off some steam in that order. After getting Kevin's statement, the police had both their eyes on William and Michelle. From the day Anna died, Will had begun to act out of character and not to mention suspicious. Mr. William Hargrove took money out of his late fiancée's bank account. The bereaved had paid off his close-to-cancellation cash insurance. He was also caught on surveillance cameras in stores where he had gone in to buy cigars and Star Wars Legos. He had even told his best friend, Kevin, that he was spending money he shouldn't to make himself feel better. He added a little more weight to the strange scale. William started researching time travel. He was texting strangers on social media platforms like WhatsApp on how to time travel. He had even offered his soul in exchange for the opportunity to go back in time. When further questioned by these time travel gurus, William said he wanted to return to April 16th. He said his best friend had made a mistake and he wanted to go back to block the situation. And on the 16th, William was caught crying in the arms of a store employee. He has told the employee that his girlfriend has just left him. William had moved back to Michelle's home. He got picked up by the police and was questioned. To begin with, they had asked William about his whereabouts on the 16th of April. William claimed to have been out on a drive with Michelle. However, when asked about his relationship with Anna, William claimed not to have any relationship with her. He told the police that he met her downtown in Corvallis while on a walk. According to William, he and Anna had gone on 2 dates, but he had made it clear to her that it wasn't going to work out between them. That ended their romantic relationship. The last time William saw Anna was in the middle of March. He had also mentioned that Anna, out of delusion, had posted their engagement on Facebook. This caught him in a lot of trouble with his true lover, Michelle. Afterwards, they asked him about the trash found next to his late fiancée, or the lady he had gone out on 2 dates with. William admitted to tossing trash out of his car window, but he claimed to have disposed of his KFC trash in a trash can in the Alcy General Store. The distance between the Alcy General Store and the logging road was about 40 miles. The investigators were not buying his story. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators in the room trying to apply pressure, immediately told William that his trash had been found in another location next to a murder victim. William initially acted surprised and heartbroken by this revelation. He couldn't believe he was being questioned about murder. The next minute, he requested a lawyer. William Hargrove was arrested for the murder of his fiancée, Anna Repkina, on the 19th of April, 2 days after her body was found. After William's arrest, Michelle was also picked up for questioning. When asked about her whereabouts on the 16th of April, Michelle, as rehearsed, said she and William had spent the day together. William had picked her up at her mother's house, and they had gone on a drive or something. After some time passed, she changed her story. She admitted that she had previously lied. Her new story was that she and William were supposed to be together. He was supposed to call her, then come pick her up, but he never called nor showed up. Later on in her questioning, the police revealed that her boyfriend of a year and a half was presently in their custody for murder. Michelle's response was okay. The skeptical investigator pointed this oddness out, and her emotions found their way out. She whimpered and blamed her former reaction on numbness from shock. William Hargrove was being indicted for murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft in June 2018, and the trial began in October 2019. The prosecution wanted the entire book thrown at William for every charge, but the defense wanted the book flipped. They maintained that William was innocent, and Melissa, the burnt lover, was the real culprit. The prosecution's argument was strong and backed with evidence, and points at his motive in guilt. William had a second lover on his neck asking him to choose. There was proof of William and Anna driving that Alston together. William's cell phone pinged at 4:30 p.m. along the logging road on the day Anna was killed. The shotgun Anna had been executed with was found in his car, and his fingerprints were the only ones on the weapon. William, who claimed not to have anything to do with Anna, was going shopping with her money. He was paying off his car insurance with her card. He had even been caught at an ATM making withdrawals with Anna's card. William had driven up to the forest with Anna. He had gotten her out of the car, shot her with his shotgun in execution style. He did this because he was making a choice between Anna and Michelle. This was the prosecution's stance. The defense, however, maintained their client's innocence. Melissa had done it. Melissa had threatened to build a snowman with Anna. Melissa's cell phone had been caught along the logging road a few weeks before Anna was killed. She had to have gone to scout the environment. Also, upon searching Melissa's house, Anna's cell phone was found with her. Melissa was not charged with any crimes, and she took to the witness stand as a witness for the prosecution. Melissa testified about how she had met William, as well as the dynamics of their relationship. She worked as a late-night cab driver, and her husband was an instructor in the Oregon State University. Their marriage was loveless. One night, she met William at the bar where he worked. He had sparked her interest. With her husband's permission, she began a relationship with William, and they only knitted closer as time went by. They grew so close that he rented a room in her house just to be even closer. William and Melissa's relationship, like her marriage, was open. So, when Anna first came into the picture, she couldn't be bothered. However, by her second visit, which looked like it was going to be permanent, Melissa couldn't take it, especially with seeing her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. She had indeed given him an ultimatum, but she had no hand in William hurting Anna. She said she never meant for Anna to get hurt, or worse, lose her life. Melissa went on to clear herself of the defense's allegations. The building a snowman threat was a joke. It may have been a bit extreme, but it was a family joke. Her cell phone was rightly caught in the forest, but William had driven her there. She had no idea why he did so or what he was planning. Lastly, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was called in for questioning. He was her man, so naturally she held onto it for him. Melissa's testimony went on for 14 hours. Besides Melissa, about 70 other people testified. This included Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, some members of Melissa's family, and so on. Melissa truly did face a lot of scrutiny with the case, especially in her hometown in Oregon. She was picked on and torn apart by the natives. At a point, she had even attempted suicide, but it was unsuccessful. The prosecutor did commend Melissa's effort to try to do the right thing. The prosecutor called Melissa's act tough, super tough. After about a month of showing up in court, the judge asked the jury for a verdict. The deliberation took less than 3 hours. Regardless of the defense's efforts, Anna's death couldn't be pinned on Michelle. Nothing tied her to the scene, unlike William. There was no forensic evidence of her at the scene or on the weapon. Michelle had truly been celebrating Easter at her mother's house, and there were several witnesses to corroborate her story. William maintained his not guilty plea, but in light of strong impenetrable evidence, William Hargrove was found guilty of every charge and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. His attorney, however, made it clear that they would be filing for an appeal. The jurors of Anna's case were reported to have formed a strong and unique bond in the little time of the case trial. After the trial, the ladies and gentlemen of the jury erected a cross on the logging trail where Anna was killed and found in memory of her. Anna would be remembered as a young, brave woman who left her home in Russia with the hopes of building one in the United States. Anna loved, and she put herself out there to be loved. She was loved alive, and she is loved after. The prosecutor in charge of her case, Amy Matsuko, said, Story 3. Alexandria Ali Costile, born on September 11, 1997, in St. Louis, Missouri, was the cherished daughter of Cindy and Keith. She had a brother, Andrew. Allie's contagious smile and warm personality instantly drew people to her. Her infectious joy and ability to make everyone around her feel comfortable made her a beloved figure in her community. Allie's bubbly nature was a characteristic that stood out from an early age. She possessed an innate ability to make people smile and brought a sense of happiness wherever she went. Whether she was playing with friends, interacting with classmates, or spending time with her family, Allie's positive energy was infectious. Due to her friendly nature, Allie could connect with people from all walks of life. Allie was never hesitant to strike up a conversation with someone she had never met before. In addition to her charming personality, Allie was known for her unwavering kindness and compassion. She was always willing to lend a helping hand or offer a listening ear to those in need. Allie attended Lindbergh High School, where she ran track and cheered. At Lindbergh High School, Allie met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed an unbreakable bond. Their friendship went beyond that of mere acquaintances. They became sisters. They shared an unwavering trust and a deep emotional connection. Allie and Maddie had a zest for life and constantly sought new experiences and adventures. Together they tackled challenges, laughed, and created memories that would last a lifetime. Another one of their favorite activities was spending lazy afternoons lounging on the couch, engrossed in a chick flick. Their favorite go-to-movie was Legally Blonde, which they would watch repeatedly, each time finding something new to laugh at and enjoy. The light-hearted humor and relatable characters provided them with endless entertainment. When Allie obtained her driver's license, she and Maddie discovered the joy of the open road. They would often take to Allie's convertible with the top down and cruise through town, feeling the wind in their hair and the warm summer air on their skin. As their senior year approached, Allie was without a date for the upcoming prom. Although a few boys had asked her out, she hadn't been in a relationship or had a serious boyfriend. Feeling disappointed, she considered skipping the event altogether. However, Maddie made a plan. Maddie knew how much Allie wanted to attend prom and was determined to make things right. Without hesitation, she offered to accompany Allie as her date. Allie, touched by her friend's selflessness, readily accepted Maddie's offer. She wore a beautiful red dress that night. After Allie graduated from high school, she eagerly enrolled in the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi. Ole Miss had always been Allie's dream school, and she had eagerly looked forward to attending it. What attracted Allie to Ole Miss was its large size and thriving community. As a sports fan, she particularly appreciated the college's strong football program, known for its rich tradition and community spirit. In the fall of 2006, Allie began her freshman year at the university, majoring in marketing and business. While Ole Miss boasted numerous attributes, one specific element drew Allie to the school. She had long dreamed of meeting a Southern boy, marrying him, and having children. To her, the grounds of Ole Miss offered the perfect setting for meeting her future partner. As Allie embarked on this new chapter in her life, She embraced the opportunities that Ole Miss presented. Ole Miss's size and sense of community allowed her to interact with diverse people. The vibrant campus atmosphere fostered a sense of camaraderie and belonging, and Allie eagerly participated in various events and activities the university had to offer. During her time at Ole Miss, Allie decided to join a sorority. Allie was a founding member of her sorority, Alpha Phi. Furthermore, Allie was the president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. In addition to academics, Allie embraced Ole Miss's rich traditions, such as the university's mascot, the Ole Miss Rebels. Attending Ole Miss proved to be a time of growth and friendship for Allie. Her friendly and kind nature made connecting with others easy, and her presence on campus quickly made her a recognizable face. One of Allie's college friends, Morgan Hull, was particularly impressed by her ability to maneuver furniture in her dorm room on the first day of freshman year. Despite being small, Allie displayed remarkable strength and determination, leaving Morgan in awe. While at a party on campus at Ole Miss, Allie met another friend, Eliza Brick. They hit it off instantly from the moment they met, as if they'd known each other for years. The connection was so strong that it seemed as if Allie and Eliza were destined to be friends. Sunsets had always captivated Allie's attention. There was something mesmerizing about the changing colors of the sky as the sun descended toward the horizon. Of all the colors that made up a sunset, pink held a special place in Allie's heart. It was not only her favorite color, but also one that made her feel calm and peaceful. There was something about the soft, delicate hues of pink that reminded her of the tranquility and beauty of nature. Allie's love for sunsets was so strong that she made it her mission to capture as many stunning shots of this natural phenomenon as possible. She was determined to share her appreciation for the beauty that surrounded her with the rest of the world. So Allie created an Instagram account dedicated to showcasing her collection of sunset photos. While Allie was out one night at a bar downtown Oxford, she met a boy named Brandon Thiesfeld from Fort Worth, Texas. Allie was immediately drawn to Brandon, thinking he was cute, and developed a crush on him. She invited him to many of her sorority dances. As time went on, Allie's feelings for Brandon grew stronger. Brandon was born into a loving and Christian family. He had a privileged upbringing, as his father was a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a typical Texan childhood. His favorite activities included hunting, fishing, and soccer. If an activity involved the outdoors, Brandon was eager to participate. During one school break, Maddie Norris, Allie's best friend from St. Louis, Missouri, came to visit Allie in Oxford, Mississippi. Maddie was eager to meet Brandon, as Allie constantly gushed about him. However, Maddie never got the opportunity to meet Brandon during her time in Oxford, since Brandon never reached out or came around. Brandon's behavior deeply hurt Allie, as she trusted that he would make an effort to connect with her and her best friend. Maddie, who witnessed Allie's pain, felt awful for her friend. Although Allie seemed hurt, she remained resilient and determined to make the most of her time at Ole Mississippi. Despite Brandon's actions, Allie was thriving academically and socially during her freshman year. She had made friends and was enjoying her college experience. The summer before Allie's senior year at Ole Miss, in July 2019, was a time of excitement and anticipation for Allie and her parents, Cindy and Keith. As Allie prepared for the final year of her education, her parents decided to visit her in Oxford for a few days. They were eager to see their daughter in her element and get a glimpse of her life at the university. That summer, Allie also taught a fitness class and attended summer school. Upon their arrival, Allie eagerly showed her parents her favorite spots around town. She took them on a personalized tour of her campus, sharing her excitement about the various buildings and landmarks. It was an opportunity for Cindy and Keith to witness their daughter's growth and take pride in her accomplishments. While her parents were staying with Allie one evening, Cindy cooked her daughter's favorite dinner. They enjoyed a special meal together, bonding over delicious food and reminiscing about old times. Because Allie loved everything beachy, she and Cindy drove to a store and purchased beachy home decor items for her apartment. They spent a few hours shopping for items that would add a touch of coastal charm to Allie's living space. From beach-themed decorations to colorful throw pillows, They carefully selected items that reflected Allie's love for the beach. On the day Allie's parents were due to return home to St. Louis, she begged them to stay one more day. She wanted them to experience more of what Oxford had to offer before they left. Despite the initial plan, Cindy and Keith eventually agreed to stay an extra day. On July 19th, the day they were due to return home, Allie's parents called around 7 p.m. Allie answered the phone, groggy from having just woken up from a nap, and explained to her mom that she planned to go out with her friends that evening. Unaware of the conversation's significance, Cindy told Allie she loved her and hung up. Little did she know it would be the last time she would talk to her daughter. Sardis Lake, 30 minutes outside of Oxford, is a vast area known for its hunting camps and recreational spaces. The area is large and is patrolled by the local sheriff's department to ensure security. On June 20, 2019, an officer was assigned to patrol Sardis Lake in the early morning hours. It was pitch black outside, with an eerie sense of isolation and desolation. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed something unusual near a picnic table. Upon closer inspection, he realized he had stumbled upon a gruesome sight. Lying lifeless on the floor was the body of a young woman, riddled with at least 9 gunshot wounds. Shocked by what he had found, the officer immediately called for backup. Minutes later, additional officers and medics arrived on the scene. The backup officers noticed a purse in a nearby ditch as they arrived. Intrigued, one of the officers approached it cautiously. Upon opening the bag, the officer discovered a wallet inside. This wallet contained an Ole Miss student ID and a driver's license with the name of Alexandria Costiel. After the discovery of Allie's body at Sardis Lake, it was necessary to contact the parents, Cindy and Keith. However, at the time, they were far from their daughter at home in St. Louis. Therefore, they never expected to receive a phone call in the middle of the night informing them that their daughter had been the victim of a homicide. This news was incredibly difficult for Cindy to process. When Allie's friends heard she had been murdered, they were just as shocked as Allie's parents. Allie's absence left a void in their hearts as they remembered the vibrant and full-of-life person she had always been. In response to this tragic news, her friends turned to social media to express their grief and demand for justice. They created a hashtag, #JusticeForAllie, to unite their voices and amplify their demands for justice. Allie's friends wrote about her in their social media posts, sharing fond memories of her and the impact she had on their lives. Through these heartfelt tributes, they aimed to honor Allie's memory and express condolences to her family. After Allie's murder, a recent graduate from Ole Miss, Brashandra Kendricks, a close friend, expressed her sorrow. Brashandra, a recent graduate, worked in student housing at the university. She described Allie as someone with a contagious happiness and a positive outlook. According to Brashandra, Allie always wore a big smile, reflecting her bright spirit. Brashandra met Allie while working as a community desk assistant in Crosby Hall, the largest residence hall on campus. Whenever Brashandra was stationed there, Allie would stop by and say hello. Brashandra said Allie was a sweet girl, living her life to the fullest and enjoying every moment. Allie's sorority released a statement after her murder, expressing their shock and sadness at the loss of one of their members. Alpha Phi sorority said they were grieving the loss of Allie Costiel, and they sent their deepest sympathies to her family during this incredibly difficult time. The sorority stated that they hoped for solace for the Alpha Phi sisters. Anna Pachow, a close friend of Allie from Ole Miss, recently posted on her Facebook page expressing her heartfelt condolences for the loss of her friend. Describing Allie as the most genuine and uplifting person she had ever known, Anna emphasized the impact she had on the lives of those fortunate enough to have met her. A member of the Lindbergh High School cheerleading squad, Emily Groh, took to Twitter to express her shock and sadness at Allie's murder. She described their time together on the cheerleading squad as an honor, and emphasized how brightly Allie shone with her positive attitude. Emily expressed her regret at not having had the opportunity to get to know Allie better. At the crime scene at Sardis Lake, where Allie's body was discovered, crime scene investigators stumbled upon several cans of White Claw seltzer and 11.40 caliber shell casings scattered on the ground. A ballistic expert was called to analyze the scene and determine what happened. The expert's analysis revealed that whoever had killed Allie had been sitting opposite her on the picnic table benches when they fired the first shot. However, after firing the first shot, the shooters stood up and began to circle the table, getting closer to Allie as they went. With every step closer to Allie, the expert theorized the shooter fired at her. One of the rounds fired by the shooter missed its target and got stuck in the wooden picnic table. Crime scene investigators searched Allie's apartment, hoping to uncover any evidence that could help in identifying and apprehending her murderer. One of the items discovered during the investigation was Allie's Apple Watch. However, despite this discovery, the police were unable to locate Allie's phone at the crime scene or her apartment. Curiously, however, some of her messages from the night before her murder inexplicably synced with her watch. As investigators delved into the content of these messages, they discovered that Allie had been engaged in lengthy conversations with Brandon Thiesfeld. It became apparent from the messages that Allie and Brandon had plans to meet up. The detective assigned to Allie's homicide case decided to reach out to Brandon early on Sunday, the day after Allie's murder. He requested an interview and asked Brandon to meet him at the police station. Brandon told the detective he could not meet that day, but offered to meet the detective the following morning at 8:30 a.m. However, 8:30 a.m. arrived on Monday and Brandon failed to show up for the scheduled interview. After Brandon did not show up for his interview at the police station regarding Allie's murder, the police started to track his cell phone. The data from Brandon's cell phone showed he was headed on Interstate 55, driving toward Memphis. Because it appeared to the police that Brandon was fleeing, they secured an arrest warrant and sent out a bolo for his vehicle. Brandon's car had a unique tag, "Take It," so his truck was easily identifiable. 2 hours after the bolo on Brandon was released, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force spotted his car at a gas station. Brandon was sitting in the car at a gas pump. Agents from the task force were able to take Brandon into custody and alerted the police in Mississippi. Investigators searched Brandon's vehicle and found a .40 caliber gun. Furthermore, when Brandon stepped out of his car, there was blood on his clothing. After Brandon was arrested and extradited to Mississippi, detectives began retracing his steps in the days leading up to Allie's murder. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon stayed with friends and went bowling. However, the following day, Brandon showed up at a friend's house with a six-pack of beer and his .40 caliber gun. The friend told the detectives that he and Brandon stayed up talking for a bit, but on Monday when the friend woke up, Brandon was gone. During the investigation of Brandon, the detectives discovered that he had never engaged in any physical altercations and had no history of violence. The detectives also gathered information from Brandon's friends and Allie's loved ones, who revealed that the couple first met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and started casually dating. However, things took a turn for the worse during their sophomore year. Allie's loved ones noticed a change in her attitude towards the relationship, indicating that she appeared more interested in it than Brandon. This difference in interest eventually led to friction between the two, with Brandon blocking Allie from contacting him because she would frequently go out and drink and call him. After a year had passed, Brandon and Allie reconnected during the summer before Allie's senior year. They decided to give their relationship another chance and started seeing each other again. In Allie's murder case, Brandon was charged with capital murder and faced the death penalty. The charge of capital murder is the most serious criminal offense that can be filed against a person. These charges were filed based on the state's belief that Brandon kidnapped Allie when he lured her to Sardis Lake. When the news of Brandon's arrest broke, it sent shockwaves through Oxford as the details of Allie's murder were widely reported. Brandon's arrest triggered a frenzy of speculation and rumors, with community members exchanging theories. Reporters flocked to the town, seeking interviews and information from those closest to Allie and Brandon. This media attention brought positive and negative attention to Oxford, as outsiders looked on with fascination and concern. In late September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to the charge of murder. As the detectives continued to build their case against him, they went back to review text messages exchanged between the couple. The detectives discovered from the text messages exchanged between Allie and Brandon that in April 2019, 3 months before her murder, Allie was preparing for the spring semester finals while also grappling with the possibility that she was pregnant. On April 14th, Allie sent Brandon a picture of an inconclusive home pregnancy test. Brandon responded to Allie's message by stating that they would wait and see if she was truly pregnant. But if she was, he made it clear that they were not going to keep the baby and told Allie, "We can get a pill." However, Allie had different thoughts on the matter. She expressed uncertainty over whether she wanted to terminate the pregnancy and mentioned that she could potentially meet a man who would love her and the baby. Despite this, Brandon remained steadfast in his decision, telling Allie that he was serious and that having a child would ruin his life. The detectives stumbled upon CCTV footage of Allie exiting a bar on Oxford Square at approximately 11:45 p.m. on July 18th, roughly an hour later. At around 1:30 a.m., Allie met up with Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. According to Brandon's defense attorneys, Allie and Brandon had been consuming alcohol throughout the day. Brandon's defense attorney alleged that when they arrived at Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. However, at some point, Brandon stood up and walked toward his truck, where he did drugs. He walked back to Allie, returned to his car, and retrieved his .40 caliber weapon. According to Brandon's attorney, there was a shooting that took place across the lake. Following the incident, Brandon sat down and engaged in further conversation with Allie. However, things took a sudden turn when he fatally shot her. The attorney argued that Brandon's actions were a result of his being under the influence of drugs and alcohol. However, the detectives and Allie's family had a different perspective on the incident. They believed that Brandon murdered Allie because he had reason to think that she was pregnant and this development would negatively impact his life. To them, the murder was premeditated, cold, and calculated. On August 27, 2021, Brandon accepted a plea deal offered by the state, which removed the death penalty from the table. Under the agreement, Brandon pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without parole. Allie's friends and family gathered in the courtroom to show their support. They wore pink, which was Allie's favorite color. After the judge read the sentencing, Brandon addressed Allie's family. He expressed remorse for his actions and sought their forgiveness. Brandon acknowledged that the pain he had caused was immeasurable, but he hoped they could find it in their hearts to forgive him. According to Allie's autopsy report, the conclusion was that Allie was not pregnant at the time of her murder. However, that does not necessarily mean that Allie was never pregnant. Allie's mother, Cindy, holds the belief that Allie was pregnant and lost the baby. Allie's family and friends erected a makeshift memorial at the site of her murder at Sardis Lake, the place where her life was taken. Cindy and Keith, her parents, cling to the memories of their daughter, though the silence still haunts them. Every time Allie's friends witness a pink sunset, their thoughts immediately turn to her. They have dedicated their lives to honoring her memory, striving to bring her light into the world and ensure she will never be forgotten. Story 4. Diana Lovejoy and Greg Mulvihill met in 2005 through an online dating site. Because they both lived far away from their families, they quickly bonded, and soon after meeting, their relationship became serious. They moved in together and lived in San Diego. Growing up, Diana had a passion for athletics and fitness. She played sports in high school, and as she grew older, she became a competitive triathlete. Fitness and the outdoors played a significant role in Diana and Greg's relationship as they both shared a love for being in the fresh air. San Diego, California emerged as a major player in the tech industry in the 2000s, and Diana and Greg were among those who took advantage of the abundant job opportunities that arose. Diana and Greg were highly skilled and successful in their respective roles. Those who worked with Diana described her as highly dependable. In 2007, 2 years after Diana and Greg first met, they made the decision to say, "I do," and embark on a new chapter in their lives as newlyweds. Their honeymoon destination of choice was Costa Rica, where they had the opportunity to attend surf school. During the early days of their marriage, Diana and Greg thoroughly enjoyed their time together. They embarked on countless adventures. The newlyweds shared zest for life and embraced every opportunity that came their way. After getting married, Diana and Greg relocated to Carlsbad, a beautiful suburb north of San Diego. This location offered lagoons, hiking trails, hills, and remote spots. Diana was particularly captivated by the area and instantly felt a sense of happily ever after when she moved into her dream home. She loved being surrounded by the picturesque landscapes and tranquil surroundings. Carlsbad provided the perfect setting for Diana and Greg to start their new chapter of life. 3 years after they exchanged vows, things began to change in Diana and Greg's relationship. Diana believed she had fibromyalgia, a chronic condition that affects millions of people worldwide. Fibromyalgia is characterized by widespread pain, tenderness in specific areas throughout the body. While the exact cause of fibromyalgia is not known, there are several factors that may contribute to the development of this condition. The fibromyalgia presented a significant challenge for Diana and Greg's marriage. Diana had always been highly motivated and active, driven by her passion for working and pursuing adventurous endeavors. These limitations imposed by fibromyalgia, such as the need for reduced stress and rest, were difficult for her to come to terms with. This sudden change in her lifestyle posed significant challenges for their dynamic as a couple. In 2011, Greg took Diana on a vacation to Santa Cruz, California to help her relax and get her mind off her illness. Greg was a loving husband who deeply cared for Diana and recognized the burden that fibromyalgia was having on her. The condition had significantly impacted Diana's well-being, leaving her with constant muscle pain and fatigue that severely limited her energy. As a result, she faced challenges in maintaining her job. The ongoing struggle with her health eventually compelled Diana to step away from her career. This decision allowed her to dedicate more time and energy to managing her fibromyalgia symptoms. Diana began spending more and more time at home in Carlsbad. There was nothing more Diana desired in life than to be a mother. She wanted to love a child and raise them to be confident and happy. Diana and Greg tried for years to have a baby. Unfortunately, Diana had several miscarriages. Losing these pregnancies was hard on Diana, not only physically but emotionally. Even though Diana didn't have children, she did have 2 cats, Lanny and Turtle, who she loved very much. One day, Turtle became ill and passed away. To help Diana through this time, Greg adopted a kitten for her. She named the cat Taffy. Greg's gift helped Diana immensely. After years of unsuccessful attempts to conceive, Diana was shocked to discover she was pregnant. Greg was overjoyed and couldn't wait to become a father. Diana shared the same sentiment, as she felt her dream of becoming a mother was gradually becoming a reality. In September 2012, Diana gave birth to a baby boy. Greg took time off work to bond with the baby after he was born. Being a father was something that Greg truly enjoyed. He cherished every moment he got to spend with his son. Diana was always concerned for her son, wanting him to be healthy and happy. However, as time went on, she began to suspect that her son might suffer from a similar illness to fibromyalgia that she had. Greg firmly believed his son was healthy and saw no need for concern. Even though Diana and Greg had different thoughts on their son's health, Diana remained steadfast in her conviction that their son struggled with an illness. She began conducting extensive research and discovered a drug called guaifenesin, similar to Mucinex, and commonly used to treat chest infections. Some people had claimed that this medication could help alleviate the symptoms of fibromyalgia. Upon learning about guaifenesin, Diana was determined to administer high doses of it to her son. However, Greg strongly opposed this idea, fearing that her attempts to medicate their son were unnecessary. The disagreement between Diana and Greg regarding their approach to their son's health care gave rise to rising tensions between them as a marriage. The stress and tension in Diana and Greg's marriage intensified when Greg sustained a shoulder injury, which forced him to leave his job. Because Greg was no longer employed, there was a decrease in money coming into the household. With this financial challenge, Diana decided to take a sales job to supplement the household income. She also attempted to generate revenue through online cooking videos, with Greg handling the camera duties. Unfortunately, this effort did not yield the desired results. Additionally, Diana participated in promotional videos featuring kitty litter, but this also failed to provide a significant financial boost. By the time Diana and Greg's son turned 2, they were fighting all the time and still butting heads over their son's health. Their relationship was in serious trouble. Diana vented to coworkers that she felt Greg was unhelpful and unsupportive. In July 2014, Greg found himself being questioned by a police officer regarding allegations of abuse made by Diana. According to the officer, Diana had filed several police reports regarding Greg's actions. As a result of these accusations, Greg was removed from the family home while Diana and their son were allowed to stay. Diana confided in a close friend about the alleged assault she had experienced at the hands of Greg. She revealed that the incident had occurred while she was sleeping. According to Diana, the medication she took made her tired, and as she gradually regained consciousness, she noticed Greg touching her without her consent. Moreover, Diana brought forth additional accusations against Greg, accusing him of sexually abusing their son. After Diana made these accusations, Child Protective Services became involved. Greg vehemently denied Diana's allegations and maintained that Diana was only making such accusations because Greg disagreed with her regarding their son's alleged medical condition. As a result, Greg filed for divorce from Diana and sought custody of their son. Detectives looked for evidence Greg abused Diana and their son. A judge ordered Greg and the boy to undergo psychiatric evaluations. Diana confided in friends about her frustrations because she said it was Greg's word against hers. The evaluations determined there was no indication that Greg was abusing his son. Furthermore, the detectives found no evidence saying Greg abused Diana either. After the case was dropped and the allegations against Greg were cleared, he was given 50-50 custody of his son, which deeply upset Diana. Diana and Greg continued with the divorce proceedings, with Diana maintaining her focus on being the best mom possible to their son. She was determined to distance herself from Greg and the accompanying drama and to embark on a fulfilling new life. In an agreement, Diana resided in the house and agreed to pay Greg for his share of the property. By 2016, things seemed to be running smoothly between the estranged couple. They had successfully negotiated an amicable custody agreement, allowing each of them equal access to their son. However, on September 1, 2016, everything changed when the Carlsbad Police Department received a phone call from Jason Kovac, a friend of Greg's. Jason reported that Greg had been shot several times and was bleeding profusely. A patrol officer from the Carlsbad Police Department was on patrol when Jason Kovac's 911 call reached dispatch, reporting Greg's shooting. The officer immediately responded to the call and found Jason and Greg on the side of the road. Jason informed the officer that the incident had occurred approximately half a mile from their location. Upon evaluating Greg's condition, the officer realized that waiting for an ambulance would be detrimental to his survival. Therefore, the officer decided to take Greg into the back of his vehicle and swiftly drove him to the hospital. In the meantime, within minutes of the officer's arrival, the SWAT team descended on the scene and began a search the area for the shooter. Despite their best efforts, the team was unable to locate the individual responsible for the shooting. Back at the hospital, Greg was being rushed into emergency surgery. Where the medical staff saw he had a gunshot wound to his chest, Greg made it through the surgery. However, he was placed on life support afterward in the hopes he would wake up on his own. As Greg recuperated in the hospital, the detectives had the opportunity to interview his friend Jason Kovac, who was in a state of shock and fear. However, Jason seemed eager to explain what had happened to Greg. According to Jason, Greg had called him seeking assistance the night in question. Greg had told Jason that he had received a call from a private investigator who claimed to have important information and documents that would be of help to him in his custody and divorce proceedings with Diana. Although the private investigator did not leave his name, he gave Greg a specific meeting time and location. Despite Greg's initial apprehension about the call, his curiosity got the better of him, and he requested Jason to accompany him, serving as backup in case anything untoward occurred. Jason, concerned about Greg's well-being, readily agreed to go along. Together, they armed themselves with a flashlight and a child's baseball bat. Greg and Jason arrived in the area indicated by the mysterious caller, only to realize that it was in a remote location. Adding to the challenge, it was pitch blackout, with no street lights and a total absence of the moon's illumination. This particular night happened to be a new moon, which occurs when the Earth is situated between the Sun and the Moon, plucking out the majority of the sunlight. As a result, the Moon appeared dim and obscure in the sky, with only a small sliver of light visible. According to Jason, the caller informed Greg that the package containing the documents was going to be attached to a large electricity pole. When Greg observed the electricity pole with the package, he walked towards it while holding a flashlight. As Greg walked, he slowly moved the flashlight around, scanning the area. While waiting, Jason noticed Greg and the flashlight fixate on something in the bushes. At that very moment, Greg abruptly exclaimed, "Gun!" In a matter of seconds, a gunshot rang out, prompting Greg and Jason to start running for their lives. Jason said they sprinted towards the car. Bullets whizzed past their heads. Upon arriving at the car, Jason realized that Greg had been shot and promptly called 911. Although Jason was unable to provide a precise description of the shooter to the detectives, he was able to lead them to the exact location of the shooting. When the crime scene investigators conducted their search in the area where the shooting occurred, they focused their attention on the electricity pole where the caller instructed Greg to receive the package. It was near the pole where the investigators made the intriguing discovery: an Angry Birds towel neatly folded into a perfect square. The detectives couldn't help but wonder if someone had intentionally left the towel there to make Greg believe that was the package for which he had been told to retrieve. According to Jason's statement, he told the detectives that he heard as many as 6 gunshots at the scene, but the investigators found no evidence of shell casings or a weapon. The lack of forensic evidence left behind led the detectives to conclude that the person who shot Greg had extensive knowledge and experience in shooting. As the investigators continued their search of the area where Greg was shot, they noticed a distinct smell. The odor of feces lingered in the air, causing concern among the detectives. One of the investigators stumbled upon a pile of feces accompanied by a towel. This towel appeared to have been used to clean up after someone went to the bathroom. The investigators promptly preserved both the feces sample and the towel as potential evidence. They carefully packaged the items and transported them to the nearest crime lab. Forensic experts would analyze the samples to try and identify any possible leads or evidence related to the shooting. However, obtaining DNA evidence can take time. It could take up to a month before a DNA profile could be obtained from the feces sample in the towel. And this waiting period posed a challenge for the detectives, as they needed to move swiftly in their search for a suspect. In the meantime, the detectives continued their efforts to locate the person who shot Greg. They conducted thorough investigations, examining all available evidence and following up on potential leads. One area of focus was Greg's estranged wife, Diana Lovejoy. The detectives contacted Diana Lovejoy and summoned her to the police department for questioning. During the interrogation, the detectives asked Diana if she knew anything about a private investigator who had been in contact with her estranged husband, Greg, regarding documents related to their divorce. Diana denied having any knowledge of the matter and stated that she no longer converses with Greg. Furthermore, Diana had an alibi for the time Greg was shot, saying that she was at home with her son. Upon further questioning, Diana stated that she did not have any additional information to offer and was unable to identify any potential suspects. Greg remained on life support for 24 hours before unexpectedly waking up and starting to recover. When his condition had improved, he was interviewed by detectives. The detectives questioned Greg about his estranged wife, Diana, wondering if she could have been involved in the shooting. Greg acknowledged their past conflicts and the ongoing divorce and custody battle over their son. However, he expressed his doubt that Diana had the capability to carry out such a violent act. He said he had no enemies and no idea who could have been behind the shooting. During the initial stages of the investigation, the detectives managed to acquire the phone number that was used to lure Greg out to the remote area where he was killed. Upon closer examination, they discovered that the phone utilized a pay-as-you-go plan, revealing that it belonged to no one. However, the detectives were successful in acquiring information from the carrier, which showed that the cell phone was purchased at best by near Carlsbad. One of the detectives promptly contacted the manager of that particular Best Buy and inquired whether they could provide details regarding the time that was purchased. Additionally, the detective asked about obtaining video footage of the person who bought the item. After spending hours sifting through hours of footage, the manager managed to find the parts that aligned with the time frame of the cell phone purchase. The manager then sent the footage to the detectives. As the detectives watched the video, they found the image to be grainy, but they were able to discern Diana Lovejoy, Greg's estranged wife, in the footage. This sighting solidified Diana as the prime suspect in Greg's shooting, and she was swiftly arrested during a traffic stop. During her arrest, Diana kept asserting she was innocent. After Diana was arrested, the detective questioned her regarding what she had purchased at Best Buy. The detective already knew that Diana had bought a pay-as-you-go cell phone, which was assigned to the number that had alerted Greg to his shooting. However, Diana lied and claimed she had purchased a router. The detectives then confronted Diana with a still image of the person captured on CCTV footage at Best by purchasing the phone. The image of the unidentified person looked exactly like Diana. Upon being confronted with this evidence, Diana admitted to buying the cell phone. However, Diana's story about her involvement in Greg's shooting changed after this point. Diana informed detectives that she was afraid of Greg, which prompted her to purchase a gun and start taking classes at Iron Sights, a local shooting range. While practicing at Iron Sights, Diana claimed she met an instructor named Weldon McDavid who helped teach her how to shoot. Weldon was an ex-Marine, weapons expert, and host of firearm training videos. According to Diana, she had confided in Weldon about her divorce from Greg and the custody battle. As their friendship blossomed, their relationship became romantic and intimate. As Diana continued speaking with the detective, she revealed that she and Weldon had devised a plan to scare Greg to end his harassment. Diana explained that Weldon had instructed her to purchase a specific phone, which they later used to lure Greg into a remote location. According to Diana, Weldon's role in this plan was merely to threaten Greg, not resort to violence. Diana admitted to driving Weldon to the site and picking him up. However, when she heard approaching police sirens in the distance, she inquired about the situation. It was then that Weldon disclosed to her that he had to shoot Greg in self-defense, as Greg had allegedly made aggressive moves toward him. She denied any involvement in the shooting and asserted that she had never asked Greg to take any violent action against her. Following Diana's admission to her involvement in what happened to Greg, she was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Fortunately, Greg made a swift recovery from the gunshot wound to his chest and was released from the hospital shortly thereafter. However, despite the good news, word of Diana's involvement as Greg's estranged wife spread, leaving people horrified. Weldon McDavid was tracked down by the police and brought into the police station for questioning. During the detective's interview with Weldon, they inquired about his connection with Diana and where he was on the night Greg was shot. According to Weldon, on the night of the shooting, he was at home, approximately 30 minutes away from Carlsbad. During the interview, the detectives informed Weldon that they wanted to acquire a sample of his DNA. Upon being asked, Weldon began to appear nervous. Recognizing that they were onto something, the detectives asked Weldon if there would be any reason for his DNA to be at the crime scene. At that point, Weldon feigned surprise and claimed he had just remembered something. Weldon informed the detectives that on the night before Greg was shot, he had embarked on a run after eating Mexican food for dinner. He stated that the food had bothered his stomach, leading him to stop and use the bathroom on a dirt road. The detectives obtained a search warrant for Weldon McDavid's house and searched, focusing on the garage and any hidden areas. Their efforts paid off when they discovered a suspicious object in the rafters. Upon closer examination, it was found to be a rifle, complete with a live round and 6 spent shell casings. These shell casings matched Jason Kovac's account of hearing 6 gunshots. Weldon was then arrested on charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. After the detectives conducted a search of Weldon's residence, they obtained a search warrant to search Diana Lovejoy's house. While examining Diana's computer, the detectives came across a peculiar search history. Diana had conducted searches for the term new moon, which piqued their interest. Upon closer examination, the detectives realized that September 1st, the night when Greg was shot, coincided with a new moon. This discovery was particularly significant as there was minimal ambient light during new moons. By carefully analyzing Diana's search history, the detectives were able to conclude that she had premeditated knowledge of the shooting. Her interest in new moons suggested her intention to utilize the absence of ambient light to facilitate her husband's murder. The detectives' findings solidified their belief that Diana had played a significant role in orchestrating the shooting. During the investigation, the detectives discovered that Diana had a motive to kill Greg. They found that the divorce settlements required Diana to pay Greg a sum of $120,000 for the house. Diana may have realized that she could not make the payment in time. Consequently, she may have reasoned that eliminating Greg would be easier than settling the debt. Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid's trial began in October 2017. Weldon took the stand and claimed that he never intended to shoot Greg. He asserted that his intention was solely to scare him. However, Weldon stated that the situation took a turn when he heard either Greg or Jason shout, "I got a gun." According to Weldon, he was a skilled marksman, and if he wanted to kill Greg, he would have. However, the state presented an alternative theory to the court. They contended that Weldon's failure to shoot and kill Greg was because Greg had shown a flashlight in his eyes, disorienting Weldon. Due to the lack of moonlight due to a new moon, Weldon had been sitting in the dark for an extended period, which affected his sense of orientation. This circumstance ultimately saved Greg's life. The jury found Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Upon hearing the verdict, Diana collapsed, although the state suspects that she faked it. Weldon was sentenced to 50 years to life, while Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life. They both maintain their innocence. Story 5. Shannon Ruchak first met her future husband, Christopher Watts, in 2012. They were natives of North Carolina, with Shannon hailing from Aberdeen and Chris from Spring Lake. On November 3, 2012, they exchanged vows and officially became husband and wife. Not everyone was happy to see Shannon and Chris get married. Chris' parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, did not attend the wedding. Cindy later said she did not go because she and Shannon did not get along. She did not like the way Shannon treated her son. 1 year after their nuptials, Shannon and Chris made a significant life decision when they decided to purchase a new home together in the picturesque town of Frederick, Colorado. This move marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, as they embarked on a journey as husband and wife in their new home. After relocating to Colorado, Shannon and Chris Watts eagerly anticipated starting their family. On December 17, 2013, their dream became a reality with the birth of their daughter, Bella Marie. 2 years later, on July 17, 2015, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Celeste Catherine, lovingly referred to as Cece. Shannon was diagnosed with lupus at a young age. Lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease that affects various parts of the body. It's caused by the immune system mistakenly attacking healthy cells and tissues. In lupus, the immune system produces autoantibodies that target and destroy healthy cells by mistake, leading to inflammation and tissue damage. This diagnosis came with the unfortunate news that it could be challenging for her to conceive and have children. The news devastated Shannon, as she had always dreamt of becoming a mother. However, against all odds, Shannon experienced the incredible joy of becoming a mother not once, but twice. Everyone who knew Shannon described her as a ball of love and compassion. She seemed too good to be true, radiating kindness and positivity. Shannon possessed a strong drive and was determined to create the best life for herself and her family. Her vibrant personality and warm nature effortlessly captivated those around her. Every morning, Shannon would reach out to her friends with a heartfelt text message that read, "Good morning, beautiful." This simple gesture always left them feeling cherished and uplifted. However, as great as Shannon was as a friend, she was an even better mother. Her love for her two daughters, Bella and Cece, was immeasurable. Shannon cherished nothing in the world more than being a mother. She was dedicated and committed to nurturing and supporting her children in every way possible. Bella, Shannon and Chris's oldest daughter, was a nurturing little girl who loved taking care of her younger sister, Cece. From a little sister, Cece, on the other hand, was known for her energetic and vibrant personality. Described as a firecracker, Cece effortlessly brought joy and laughter into everyone's lives. Social media played a significant role in Shannon's life. She utilized these platforms to share videos about her life and showcase her vibrant personality. Her friends and family enjoyed watching these videos, which provided a glimpse into her daily life and the lives of her daughters. In many of her videos, Shannon expressed her admiration for her husband, Chris. She once posted a video in which she stated, "Chris is the best thing that has ever happened to her." This declaration of love painted a picture of Chris as a devoted husband and caring father. While Shannon's friends and family admired her happy marriage, they also noticed that Chris kept to himself. They found it difficult to connect with him on a deeper level. Despite this, they all accepted Chris's presence, knowing that Shannon was completely head over heels in love with him. In June 2015, Shannon and Chris filed for bankruptcy. The couple faced significant financial challenges, including a large mortgage payment, car payments, loans, and medical bills. Additionally, they had accumulated a substantial amount of credit card debt. At the time of the bankruptcy filing, Chris was employed at Anadarko Petroleum, while Shannon was employed at a children's hospital call center. By 2016, Shannon had embarked on a new career as a consultant for an MLM company, Lavelle. Her role involved selling a nutritional supplement called Thrive, which was delivered through a patch. Shannon's enthusiasm for her job was evident. Cynthia DeRosette, a co-worker, said every person that connected with her felt her light. Although Shannon was content with her life with her husband and 2 daughters, she yearned for one more pregnancy. Her heart longed for a baby boy to complete their family. In spring 2018, Shannon received an unexpected yet delightful surprise when she discovered she was pregnant for the 3rd time. The news filled her with excitement and anticipation. Wanting to capture her husband's reaction, Shannon devised a plan. She decided to surprise Chris by telling him the exciting news on May 28th. As she awaited his arrival, Shannon dressed in a shirt that displayed the words, "Whoops, we did it again," a humorous play on Britney Spears' hit song, "Oops, I Did It Again." In the video, Chris can be seen entering the room, completely oblivious to the surprise awaiting him. He appeared shocked and caught off guard, and not necessarily happy. After further testing, Shannon discovered she was having a baby boy. Shannon and Chris were overwhelmed with joy. They decided to name their little bundle of joy, Nico. When Bella and Cece, Shannon's daughters, heard the news that they were going to be big sisters, they were so excited. During the summer of 2018, pregnant with Nico, Shannon traveled to North Carolina to spend time with her family. Chris, on the other hand, stayed behind in Colorado for work. While in North Carolina, Shannon decided to take her daughters, Bella and Cece, to visit Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie. Despite not getting along with her in-laws, Shannon agreed to proceed with the trip for the sake of her daughters. On the day of the visit, Cindy prepared a snack for Cece, even though Shannon had told Cindy that Cece suffered from a nut allergy. However, despite this knowledge, Cindy served her granddaughter a snack that contained peanuts. This incident deeply troubled Shannon, as she felt that Cindy had put Cece's life at risk. In a text message to Chris, Shannon expressed her frustration and disappointment. She wrote, "You should call your dad and tell him you did not appreciate your mom putting your daughter at risk today. She's evil and willing to risk your daughter's life just to get under my skin. You and your dad are no different if you are okay with her behavior. There's nothing wrong with me and I'm not crazy. I just love my kids way too much." While Shannon was in North Carolina visiting family, she observed that Chris's communication with her had shifted strangely. Chris stopped responding to her messages and calls, leaving Shannon puzzled. When she inquired about the matter, Chris shared that he had taken on additional responsibilities at work due to the arrival of new employees. However, he insisted that the situation was not cause for concern. On July 31st, Chris flew from Colorado to North Carolina to spend the week with Shannon and their 2 daughters, Bella and Cece. The entire family was eagerly anticipating his arrival. As Chris stepped off the airplane, Bella and Cece rushed toward him, their excitement palpable. Chris scooped them up in his arms and embraced them tightly. However, his interaction with Shannon was noticeably different. Instead of greeting her with a kiss, he nodded in acknowledgement. Taken aback by Chris's behavior, Shannon felt deeply hurt. Unable to contain her emotions, she texted one of her friends, expressing her growing concern. Shannon confided that she felt as if Chris had somehow changed, and she barely recognized the person she had married. Her words were filled with a mixture of sadness and confusion. Shannon texted her friend, stating that Chris, her husband, refused to talk to her even though they were physically present in the same room. Instead of engaging in direct conversation, Shannon and Chris exchanged messages through their phones. She even shared a picture with her friend depicting her and Chris sitting on separate couches facing in opposite directions. In these text messages, Shannon expressed her concern that Chris might be seeing another woman, which shocked her friend. The friend adamantly denied this possibility. They reassured Shannon that Chris loved her too much to engage in such behavior. Shannon sent a text message to one friend and poured out her heart. She revealed that Chris had confessed to her that he no longer believed they were compatible. This revelation came as a shock to Shannon, who had always felt that their love was strong. To make matters worse, Chris had told Shannon that he had hoped that getting her pregnant would somehow change his feelings. However, this did not prove to be the case, and Shannon was heartbroken to hear this. She had always cherished their relationship and believed their love could withstand challenges. Determined to save her family, Shannon suggested to Chris that they attend couples counseling. She knew their relationship was in trouble and believed professional guidance could help them navigate their difficulties. However, Chris flatly refused. Shannon was willing to make compromises and do whatever it took to save their relationship. However, she quickly realized that Chris was unwilling to reciprocate. Despite her best efforts, Shannon realized that there was simply nothing Chris wanted or was willing to compromise on. After returning home to Colorado from a trip to North Carolina, Shannon, Chris, and their daughters settled back into their usual routine. However, Shannon's stay was not prolonged, as she soon found herself embarking on another journey to Arizona for a business trip. During her stay in Arizona, Shannon's friends noticed a shift in her demeanor. Instead of her usual cheerful disposition, she seemed confused and distressed. One evening, while staying in their hotel room, Shannon divulged her concerns to her friends. She revealed that Chris had expressed his doubts regarding their compatibility and refused to consider going to couples counseling. On August 11th, as Shannon was with her friends in Arizona, a notification appeared on her phone, indicating a charge for a restaurant that had been made on her and Chris' account. While this in itself was not unusual, the amount charged raised concern. Shannon couldn't help but wonder why the bill was so high. She couldn't help but suspect Chris might be having dinner with another woman. This suspicion left her with a lingering feeling of unease and doubt. Around 1:48 a.m., Shannon returned home from her business trip. Shannon's close friend, Nicole Atkinson, drove her home. Footage from Shannon and Chris' doorbell camera showed Shannon entering her house. On August 13th, Shannon's friends woke up concerned about her because they hadn't received her usual good morning messages. They knew that she had an important appointment at the OBGYN scheduled for 9:30 a.m., and they knew that Shannon would never miss that. However, when Shannon missed a business meeting at 12:30 p.m., Nicole Atkinson, one of her closest friends, became very concerned. Nicole knew something was wrong when no one had heard anything from Shannon all day. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. Feeling a sense of urgency, Nicole made the decision to drive to Shannon's house. As she approached her house, her stomach sank. Shannon's van was parked in the garage, and the shoes she wore every day were by the front door. Nicole knocked on the front door of Shannon's house, hoping she would come out and explain that she had overslept and was tired from her flight the previous day. However, Shannon never responded. One of Shannon's friends contacted her husband, Chris, to inform him that they were unable to get in touch with her. Chris assured them not to worry, as he believed that Shannon might have taken their daughters to a friend's house. His response puzzled Shannon's friends, as they were all in contact with one another, and none of them knew her whereabouts. Shannon did not have any plans to meet with any of them. Eventually, Shannon's friends informed Chris that they were planning to notify the Frederick Police Department and report Shannon and the girls as missing. Although Chris stated he did not want to get the police involved, Nicole, worried about her friend, called 911 to report Shannon, Bella, and Cece missing. After Nicole called the police, an officer from the Frederick Police Department arrived at Shannon and Chris's house. From the officer's body cam footage, it was clear that Nicole was deeply distressed over her missing friend. As Nicole was explaining everything she knew about Shannon and her daughters, Chris pulled up to the house. Chris got out of his car and approached the officer, but it was clear he did not share the same level of concern as Nicole, even though his wife and daughters were missing. While searching Shannon and Chris's house, the officer stumbled upon Shannon's purse. Within this purse, the officer discovered Shannon's medication for her and her 2 daughters. The discovery of Shannon's purse further worried her friend Nicole, but Chris, Shannon's husband, remained calm as a cucumber. Additionally, the officer found Shannon's wedding pant on the bedside table. The officer and Chris walked to a neighbor of Shannon's and Chris to review footage from their security camera. This camera was positioned in such a way that it captured part of Shannon and Chris's driveway and garage. In the footage, Chris is seen opening the garage door, moving around, and leaving the home at 5:28 a.m. As they watched the footage on the TV screen, Chris's demeanor began to change. He started to appear nervous and fidgety, as if he didn't enjoy whatever he was seeing on the screen. Even Chris's neighbor picked up on his strange behavior. When Chris left the house, the neighbor leaned into the officer and expressed doubts about Chris's behavior. The neighbor mentioned that he didn't think that Chris was acting right. Shannon's friends were concerned about her well-being and wanted to initiate a search for Bella and Cece as soon as possible. However, Chris had a different opinion, discouraging them from joining the search. His response worried Shannon's friends, as they could not comprehend his lack of worry for his wife and daughters. Officers canvassed Shannon and Chris's neighborhood, going door to door to ask if anyone had seen Shannon or anything unusual. By the following day, the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the search for Shannon, Bella, and Cece. The Boulder Police Department also provided cadaver dogs, which handlers used to search the property and inside the house. As the officers searched the inside of the home, one handler remarked that they smelled cleaning solutions and thought the house looked too clean. This comment raised suspicions and caused the officers to take a closer look at the cleanliness of the home. The presence of cleaning solutions suggested that someone had taken steps to conceal evidence or clean up any potential clues. During the process of searching Chris's house, he gave an interview to 2 Denver stations outside his residence. In this interview, Chris claimed that he and Shannon did not argue before her leaving. However, he mentioned that they had an emotional conversation. He said he wanted his family back and pleaded with whoever held Shannon, Bella, and Celeste to return them home. Chris emphasized his desire to see everyone again and that his house is not complete without his family. However, during the interview, Chris's behavior raised some eyebrows. He appeared cold and unemotional, which puzzled those who knew him. Shannon's friends who were watching the interview felt disgusted by Chris's nonchalant demeanor. They believed his behavior was strange and contradictory to his plea for his family's return. On August 14th, Special Agent Coder interviewed Chris. During the interview, Chris expressed his belief that Shannon might have taken the girls and gone to a friend's house to decompress. Throughout the interview, tips began pouring into the police station regarding potential sightings of Shannon and the girls. The police department received various pictures, and Chris was asked to identify any of the individuals as his missing wife and daughters. However, Chris was unable to provide any identification. Agent Coder asked Chris about his and Shannon's marriage during the interview. Chris responded by stating that he had never cheated on Shannon, and as far as he knew, Shannon had never cheated on him either. He said that he and Shannon were the type of people who would confide in one another if they ever felt like straying. During the interview, Agent Coder noticed a peculiar behavior from Chris. He observed that Chris made frequent hand movements towards his neck, which caught his attention. Agent Coder's suspicions grew, leading him to believe that the movements may hint at something deeper. At one point during the interview, Agent Coder excused himself briefly and informed the other officers working on the case that he thought Chris might have strangled Shannon. As more time passed with Shannon and her daughters missing, The feelings of worry and despair intensified among the loved ones who knew her. Despite their doubts that Shannon was safe, they desperately clung to the hope that Bella and Cece might still be alive somewhere. The absence of any updates or information from the authorities only heightened their anxiety and despair. Chris was released from the police department after a 3-hour interrogation. However, the police made arrangements for him to return on the following day, August 15th, for a polygraph test. Chris agreed to fulfill this request. On August 15th, Chris picked up his father from the airport and drove to the Frederick Police Department. Tammy Lee from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation conducted Chris's polygraph test. During the polygraph, Chris denied knowing where Shannon was and claimed to have not caused her disappearance. Chris would have needed a score of about -4 to pass this polygraph test. Chris scored a dismal -18 on the polygraph. This outcome left the detectives convinced that Chris was responsible for the deaths of his wife and daughters. However, they still needed to persuade him to admit it. The special agent, a highly skilled coder and polygrapher, Tammy Lee, confronted Chris regarding his failed polygraph results. He admitted that he did not physically harm Shannon but acknowledged that he caused her emotional pain. Furthermore, he confessed to having an affair with a coworker named Nicole Kessinger. Chris expressed regret for his infidelity and stated that he had never anticipated engaging in such behavior. However, he denied any involvement in causing his family's disappearance. A little while into the interview, Chris requested the presence of his father, Ronnie. The officers were initially skeptical, fearing that allowing Ronnie into the interview room could lead to Chris seeking legal representation. However, they took a risk and allowed it anyway, hoping that his presence could get Chris to confess. In the interrogation room, Chris met with his father and admitted to murdering Shannon. However, he claimed that he did it only because she had hurt their daughters, Bella and Cece. Upon hearing this excuse, Shannon's friends knew he was lying. They knew that Shannon would never harm her daughters, as she loved them deeply and was looking forward to giving birth to her first son, Nico. Chris admitted to burying Shannon in a shallow grave at one of his work sites. He also said that he had disposed of the bodies of his daughters in oil tanks. However, even after being arrested and taken into custody, he continued to deny that he ever hurt them. The detectives did not believe for a moment that Shannon had hurt her daughters. Eventually, Chris pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty as punishment. It was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At Chris's sentencing hearing, the judge made a bold statement regarding the heinous crime he had committed. Chris stated that this crime was by far the most inhumane and vicious one he had encountered out of the thousands of cases he had dealt with in his career. A few years later, Chris admitted to having murdered Shannon, his wife, in their bed. Chris stated that he had strangled her after she confronted him about an extramarital affair and threatened to take their daughters away. Then, Chris put her body in his truck and drove it along with his 2 daughters to his work site. Once there, Chris claimed that he took the lives of his 2 young daughters one by one. This grim revelation revealed that one daughter had to witness the death of her sister before succumbing to the same fate. Story 6. Melissa Mims, born in Houston, Texas, was the child of Michael and Marion. She had 3 siblings, a brother named Michael Jr. and 2 sisters named Maria and Michelle. Due to the sisters' close bond, their parents raised them as triplets. Growing up, Melissa was known for her adventurous spirit and willingness to try new things. She had a zest for life that often got her into trouble, but also made her the life of the party. When Melissa reached adulthood, she made the decision to leave Texas and relocate to Jacksonville, North Carolina. One day, she met a man who would later become her husband. She then became Melissa Platt. In October 1995, Melissa gave birth to her first daughter, Brianna. Several years later, in July 2003, she welcomed her second child, Chastity. Unfortunately, Melissa's marriage didn't work out, and it ended in divorce in 2005. The divorce left Melissa facing numerous challenges. She found herself struggling to adapt to her new reality. In 2004, Melissa encountered legal trouble when she was arrested for writing bad checks. The charge landed her in hot water, and a year later, in 2005, she was found guilty and sentenced to probation. Melissa's difficulties in life led her to turn to alcohol as a means of coping. However, this decision exacerbated her problems rather than providing solace. As a result, it was decided that her daughters would be better off living with a relative, as Melissa was not in a suitable state of mind to care for them. In 2006, while working at an auto parts store in Jacksonville, North Carolina, Melissa encountered a customer named Joey Tyndall. Although Joey was a few years older than Melissa, they hit it off instantly. Joey, who worked as a truck driver, captured Melissa's attention, and it wasn't long before they began dating. Like Melissa, Joey shared a love for alcohol. In their shared home, drinking became an integral part of their lives. Every aspect of their relationship revolved around drinking, and they spent most of their time indulging in alcoholic beverages. Their home in Pink Hill served as a hub for their drinking escapades, with Melissa and Joey spending most of their time there. Joey frequently consumed alcohol while also taking Paxil, an antidepressant. Melissa confided in her family that when he combined alcohol and drugs, Joey would become violent. His two sons from a previous relationship echoed Melissa's statements during their interviews with authorities. Drinking alcohol did not alleviate Melissa's mental health issues and personal struggles. Eventually, she realized that alcohol was controlling her life and reached out to her family in Texas for help. Melissa told them that she was scared and concerned about the path she was on, and admitted that she was not in control of her drinking. She revealed that her boyfriend, Joey, constantly pressured her to drink. Due to everything happening in her life, Melissa made the decision to check herself into the Onslow County Behavioral Health Clinic in Jacksonville, North Carolina, with the hope of overcoming her alcohol addiction. However, she checked herself out of the clinic only a few days later. Joey had been harassing Melissa with threatening messages, telling her that if she persisted in seeking help for herself and went to rehab, he would break up with her. This incident wasn't the first time Joey manipulated Melissa. There were several previous instances when he kicked her out of the house, forcing her to sleep outside in her car because she had nowhere else to go. Melissa's family desperately pleaded with her to return to Texas, where they lived, and end her relationship with Joey. However, Joey's manipulative behavior made Melissa feel like she had nowhere else to go, and feeling like she had no other choice, she remained with him. On Wednesday, October 8th, Melissa's mother, Marion, called Melissa's probation officer because she was concerned about Melissa. Regardless of the circumstances, Melissa maintained constant contact with her mother and her sisters, Marion and Maria. However, it had been days since Marion, Maria, and Michelle had seen or heard from Melissa, which was unusual. They began calling Melissa multiple times throughout the day, but there was no answer. When Joey occasionally answered, he would provide excuses for why Melissa was unable to come to the phone. Terrified for her well-being, Marion and Melissa's sisters made 4 to 5 calls each night, only to be met with another excuse from Joey. Slowly but surely, Joey turned Melissa's phone off and disconnected her voicemail, leaving her family even more suspicious. Melissa's family was deeply concerned about Joey's behavior and suspected foul play. After Marion contacted Melissa's probation officer, he decided to drive to Joey and Melissa's home in Pink Hill, North Carolina, to ensure that Melissa was safe and out of trouble. Arriving at the house around 5:17 p.m., the probation officer knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Knowing that Melissa was unemployed, the probation officer realized that there was nowhere for her to be, so he continued his knocking. However, Melissa never responded to the door. Eventually, the probation officer's concern grew, as he had observed Melissa 1 week earlier and smelled alcohol on her, indicating that she was drinking again. He worried that she might be inside the house, passed out, and in need of help. However, as a probation officer, he lacked the authority to enter the residence. Instead, he decided to call the Lenoir County Sheriff's Office for assistance. Several minutes after the probation officer's initial call for help, 2 officers from the sheriff's department arrived at the scene. However, they informed the probation officer that they were unable to break into someone's home without probable cause. They explained that contacting the homeowner, Joey Tyndall, was necessary to obtain entry into the house. One of the officers managed to get hold of Joey, who informed them that he was currently not at home, but at work. However, he mentioned that his girlfriend, Melissa, should be present in the house. During the phone conversation with the officer, Joey stated that Melissa might be resting inside as she was unwell. Joey explained that Melissa's drinking had become increasingly out of control, and he mentioned that it was possible she may have passed out. He emphasized to the officer that he did not always have the ability to provide the best care for Melissa. Still, Joey said he had reached out to Melissa's mother on multiple occasions, seeking assistance and getting her back into rehabilitation. After Joey granted the police permission to enter the house, Melissa's probation officer and 2 Lenoir County Sheriff's officers proceeded to the back of the property and entered through the back door. Once inside, the officers made their way through the house until they found what seemed to be a bedroom. Upon entering the room, the officers discovered Melissa lying motionless on her bed, covered by a blanket. The officers initially attempted to make contact with Melissa by asking her if she needed help, but their efforts were met with no response. Upon closer examination, the officers noticed that Melissa was trying to move her body and not her head, indicating that she was still alive. However, her condition did not appear to be stable. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the officers promptly called for an ambulance to be sent to Melissa and Joey's home. As the officers waited for the ambulance to arrive, they carefully examined the bedroom they were in. One particular detail caught their attention. The bed that Melissa was lying on had no sheets, and she was wrapped in a blanket that covered only the top half of her body. The officers noticed that Melissa was nude from the waist down, with only a shirt on. However, it was evident that the shirt was merely draped over her, exposing her head in one arm. The officers observed Melissa shaking uncontrollably. In an effort to provide some modesty and cover her to keep warm, the officers attempted to shield Melissa while they waited for their medical backup to arrive. During this time, they noticed multiple bruises on her body, scattered in different stages of healing. While some bruises appeared fresh, others appeared older, indicating various instances of abuse. One of the items the officers noticed in Melissa's room was a table with 2 cups containing straws. Upon closer inspection, the officers discovered that the cups were filled with alcohol. This discovery shocked the officers, as they had anticipated finding water or juice in Melissa's condition. The smell of alcohol in the cups raised suspicions and prompted further investigation. With their suspicions raised due to the presence of bruises on Melissa's body, the officers decided to approach her to inquire about any potential abuse. Despite her immense pain, Melissa shook her head no in response to their question. However, in whispers and broken words, she tried to explain to the officers that the bruises were a result of a fall she had experienced while attempting to answer her phone. Throughout her explanation, Melissa kept her eyes closed, as if merely lifting her eyelids was causing her too much pain. The ambulance eventually arrived at Melissa and Joey's house and entered through the back door. As they walked into the home, they were immediately struck by the pungent smell. This odor was so strong that it was nearly impossible to ignore. According to the initial reports filed by the EMTs, the smell in the house was a combination of cigarettes and body fluid. It bore a strong resemblance to the scent of someone sitting in their urine and feces for an extended period. The paramedics approached the bed where Melissa lay and asked her questions. However, Melissa remained unresponsive, making only minimal movements when someone spoke loudly and closely to her ear. There were instances where Melissa struggled to open her eyes due to the intense pain she was experiencing. One of the paramedics noticed that the mattress she was lying on was soiled with urine, feces, and blood. Additionally, he saw that Melissa had a dark eye, along with other concerning bruises on her neck, a swollen jaw, and blood in her eye. As the medic proceeded with his examination, he observed that Melissa had several broken toes and various stages of healing. He further noticed bruising and blood in her private area, but there was no indication of sexual abuse. As paramedics and officers were examining Melissa at Joey Tyndall's home, Joey arrived home from work. One of the officers approached Joey and inquired as to how Melissa ended up in the condition she was in. Joey replied that Melissa had a tendency to be clumsy and often found herself in accidents. The officer informed Joey that Melissa's condition was serious and required immediate medical attention. Despite his position as Melissa's boyfriend and the sole person in the state who cared for her, Joey declined to accompany her to the hospital. Instead, he insisted on staying home and periodically checking in for updates. Upon her arrival at the hospital, Melissa underwent a thorough examination, which revealed that she was suffering from a closed head injury. Recognizing the seriousness of her condition, the hospital where she initially sought treatment determined that they were unable to provide the specialized care she needed. As a result, she was airlifted to a different medical facility, the Pitt Memorial Hospital in Greenville, North Carolina. At Pitt Memorial Hospital, the doctors determined that Melissa's injuries were of such a severe nature that the services of the police were required. It was decided that the police officers who found her at the scene should visit the hospital and take pictures of her injuries. The officers arrived at the hospital and took their designated pictures of Melissa's injuries. Once the officers had completed their task, Melissa's case was handed over to two separate detectives. While at Pitt Memorial Hospital, a doctor conducted a CT scan on Melissa, revealing that she had suffered an intracranial hemorrhage due to physical trauma. The CT scan also showed that Melissa's jaw was broken into two parts. Due to the extent of Melissa's brain injury, she needed immediate surgical intervention. She underwent an emergency surgery known as a frontal craniotomy. During this surgical procedure, the surgeon discovered a second bleed in Melissa's brain. This doctor determined that this second brain bleed occurred at a different time than the first injury. During the surgery, the doctor also uncovered evidence that Melissa had been shot in the past. Melissa had told everyone that she had accidentally shot herself. However, Melissa's loved ones suspect Joey's involvement in this incident. They believe that Joey might have had something to do with her shooting. The two detectives assigned to Melissa's case visited Joey Tyndall at his house to interview him about Melissa and her injuries. During the interview, the detective asked Joey to show them the area of the house where Melissa had fallen and injured herself, and they asked for specific details about those incidents. However, Joey struggled to tell the detectives the times and dates when Melissa fell. Joey was general in his answers and never gave any specifics. However, Joey did remember details about Melissa's drinking struggles. He said there was one night when he woke up and Melissa wasn't in bed. Worried, Joey said he went to look for her outside the house and found Melissa naked, sleeping in the back of her car. According to Joey, Melissa had injuries on her body from running around outside and falling. The detectives also took the opportunity to consult Melissa's probation officer. He confirmed that he had seen Melissa 1 week before her hospitalization, but at that time he did not notice any bruises or injuries on her. On November 17th, Melissa underwent a second surgery, during which it was determined she had necrosis, a brain failure. Following the surgery, Melissa was conscious for a brief period but remained out of it. By early November, Melissa developed pneumonia, and by the end of the month she required a third surgery due to spinal fluid in her brain. Melissa then began experiencing daily seizures, which escalated to seizures occurring every few minutes. On December 17th, it became evident that Melissa's condition was not improving. Following a difficult conversation, Melissa's loved ones made the heart-wrenching decision to remove her from the life support system. After spending 9 weeks in the hospital, Melissa passed away at 7:58 p.m., surrounded by her family. Just prior to her passing, the detectives paid a visit to Melissa. However, they visited her after one of her surgeries, and unfortunately, her responses made little sense. Melissa told the detectives that she had sustained her injuries in a car accident, though she also admitted being a bit clumsy. The medical examiner ruled that a brain injury caused Melissa's death, but they were not able to determine the manner of death. Melissa's family and friends have been fighting for over 10 years to have her death classified as a homicide, seeking justice for their loved one. One day after Melissa's passing, her mother received an anonymous phone call. The person on the other end of the line informed her about Joey Tyndall's history of domestic violence, and asserted that he had assaulted and abused women on multiple occasions. Furthermore, other women who had encounters with Joey encouraged Melissa's family to persist in pressing charges, as they were convinced that Joey was a bad person who needed to be apprehended. Upon learning this information, Melissa's family decided to investigate Joey's background. Melissa's family was informed that Joey Tyndall's 2 previous marriages ended in divorce. In 2001, his first marriage came to an end after an incident where he allegedly pointed a gun at his ex-wife. Their 2 sons who witnessed the incident corroborated their mother's story. As a result of this attack, his ex-wife sought a restraining order, but it was dismissed by the court 6 months later. Joey's second marriage, which lasted a mere 7 months, came to an end when Joey's ex-spouse obtained a restraining order against Joey due to allegations of domestic violence. The judge presiding over the case ruled that Joey must stay away from his ex-wife for only 1 week. Melissa's family has learned that one of Joey's sons divulged during their youth that a female friend once stayed at their house. It was alleged that she woke up to Joey with his hands down her pants, prompting her to scream in fright. The police were unable to find sufficient evidence to charge Joey Tyndall with a crime in relation to Melissa's death. They determined that Joey was genuinely trying to take care of Melissa. In fact, in the days prior to her death, he brought her home a meatloaf dinner and fed it to her. Joey claimed he did his best to assist her, and the authorities believed his story. A change in Melissa's case occurred on June 28, 2021, when another death certificate was issued, citing homicide as the manner of death. As a result, the Lenoir County Sheriff's Office reopened Melissa's investigation. Melissa's family, who had hired a private detective and funded their efforts through merchandise sales and GoFundMe campaigns, reached out to a doctor who suspected Melissa's injuries were a result of chronic physical abuse. The family attributes the reopening of the case to the information uncovered by the private investigator. For Melissa's family, the change in death certificate was seen as a major victory in their quest for justice. Melissa's sister, Michelle, revealed that the news brought her to tears. She expressed that she never expected to receive any news about her sister's death, considering the circumstances of the case. Michelle stated that her family unanimously agreed that justice could only be achieved if the culprit responsible for Melissa's death was found guilty. As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.